Well, obviously we've got the drone up and running, which is great news. And there's a little bit of bad news. I've been working with the drone trying to get it up and running and haven't had a chance to look much at the weather. So we're going to do kind of a workup from scratch to see what's happening tonight. So welcome to Meteorology Lab. I'm Tim Vasquez, and let's head into the charts and see what's going on this evening. We're going to start from south to north here. Taking a quick look at the health of the stream, dropped 72 frames, so we took a little hit somewhere in there, but it seems to be holding okay. Anyway, I think so far it looks good. So this is the current surface chart, and the green is going to represent the moisture. So we can see that we've got a little bit of an influx of 70s dew points coming into Texas, and as a result, we're getting some of those CB buildups out to the east of Dallas and Waco there. Out to the west, doesn't look much like spring, looks a lot like summer there. Dew points in the 50s and even a few low 50s, unbelievably, with that southeast flow there. So we're certainly taking a hit there on the moisture. Let's go up to the north a little bit, see if we can find any relief. A little bit of shower activity there at Dalhart, showing on the potential temperature a little bit of a bubble there. So that's a little bit of outflow coming out of that area in far north Texas Panhandle. We do have some pretty good moisture in Oklahoma and Kansas. You can see that right there. Southeast flow, a little bit of upslope flow coming into that area, but the same problem. All this area is underneath a ridge. The best jet stream energy is way off to the top left corner, and that leaves us kind of high and dry out here in the southern plains. Not a whole lot going on except in the higher elevations. Let's try going up a little bit further north into Kansas and Nebraska. Looks like a little bit of evapotranspiration helping things out there in the eastern part of the region, even into central South Dakota. And I can make out a little bit of a front through here, maybe. Looks like maybe a little bit of a boundary there north of Scottsbluff. Temperatures running about 85 in central Nebraska, and then north of that, we're just looking mostly at 70s. So I think that's probably... we got a little bit of outflow right there. So anyway, we'll go ahead and work that out on the charts. One problem with a situation like this, lots of thunderstorms and so on, is that there's too many areas to cover. I can't really go through effectively and cover like the slight risk, all the stuff down the plains, and all through the southeast U.S., especially when I haven't been at the desk today. So we're just going to kind of focus on a few key areas. We have severe watches out for the Rapid City, Alliance, Cheyenne area, and also down there in New Mexico. Storm reports so far this evening. Looks like we've got one little tornado report out there near the mountains. That looks like out near, I guess, Artesia, Roswell. And the rest of it, mostly that green indicating a bit of hail. And only a few isolated wind reports further out over the plains. So we'll go ahead and head to the upper level patterns and just kind of see what's going on here. Let me just duck in on chat, make sure everything is looking good there. Okay, very good. All right, let's continue on. So at this time, we've got a very large long wave ridge covering the western and central U.S. Even extends out over much of the Rockies and the central U.S. there. So superimposed on that, a little bit of a low right there. We saw that yesterday across Nevada. Now it's moving towards northern Utah. It's starting to eject northeastward right there. There's a little bit of high pressure there up in Alberta. If you look at the wind flow and kind of ignore the lines, you can kind of see that right there? There's some little trace there of anticyclonic flow. So we've actually, even though the contours don't show it, we've got a high up there in the upper levels. And when we have a high north of a low, that gives us a Rex block. So no surprise that we're not really seeing much improvement in this pattern. So that's our Rex block right there, kind of locking up the flow upstream. But the jet stream is slowly creeping out into Colorado there, making an exit there in the southern Dakotas, Nebraska. So we should see more thunderstorm activity tomorrow in that region. Little checkup on the 700 millibar chart showing the, mostly this time of year we look at the temperatures. I really wish we had some severe weather to go over. I mean, this is starting to become a little bit routine, but let's take a look anyway. Okay, we've got some pretty warm temperatures at El Paso and Midland there, up to 11 Celsius, and the thermal ridge extending up into eastern Colorado, and then up to the north where the temperatures are a little cooler, 6 to 7 Celsius. That's where we're getting a little bit of thunderstorm activity. The soundings are a little bit more conducive, a little bit less capping in that area compared to down south. And a lot of what we're seeing is forming mostly on the mountains. The orographics really helps out a lot when you have a cap, but that's no guarantee that the storms are not going to fall apart once they start heading out into the plains. 850 millibar chart. Checking in on that moisture, and it's feeding up the Rio Grande and up to the Panhandles and towards Dodge City. And even there, at Dodge City, they're getting 57 Fahrenheit at 850 millibars. That's 14 Celsius there. That's pretty good moisture, and you can see a little bit of a low-level jet, 30 to 35 knots, coming in from Midland and Lubbock. So there's a little bit of dynamical support. Obviously, we're lacking ingredients, but at least, you know, that's something there. Thickness in isobars. I don't really see any fronts in the U.S. It's getting to be about that time of the year where the fronts start to fall apart there. But we can fall back on looking at highs. We've been doing that this week. There's a couple of highs right there. So that's outlining a large polar air mass. The southern part of that air mass is mostly modified. But up north, you can see very fresh polar air mass over Quebec. Good old Quebec. I want to try out some, I think they call it poutine, P-O-U-T-I-N-E. It's supposed to be like cheese curds on fries. I hear that's really good. I don't think we can get any of that down here in Texas, but yeah, that's the staple food up there in Montreal. I'd like to get some of that there. Anyway, cold front moving off the Canadian Maritimes, and that's out of the picture there. Cold air coming in behind, modified tropical or polar air across Virginia, the Ohio River Valley. So we're getting a little bit of a backdoor mechanism there, some drier air, a little bit of reinforcement of boundaries in places like Memphis, Little Rock, and Mississippi there. So that's helping a lot there with the generation of thunderstorms in that area, but not so much in Texas. Texas is a little different. Let me show you what the storms are doing. You saw that on the opening clip after just before we switched to the charts, that little anvil. Thanks to the drone, there's no way I could have gotten that without the drone. So let me switch over to the satellite. Not that one. Yeah, this one right here. This is an animation from College DuPage showing the sea breeze. We're looking at East Texas, and Dallas is located right there. Waco, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. And you can see all that thunderstorm activity. This is around 12:30, so that's going to be about lunchtime, and very active there around Houston. Very common for thunderstorms to blow through heading south to north during the middle of the day, and those thunderstorms are on their way northwards. So let's kind of step through, and you can start seeing some of these surges of outflow air. So there's one right there, there's another one here, there's another one. So these are all pressing up to the north, and let's finish out that animation. Yep, there goes that outflow racing northward, and you can see that the thunderstorms themselves, they kind of hang behind. because the upper level flow is not conducive to moving storms north. So what happens is these cells here, they die off, and we get new storms forming further north. So let's watch that happen. Yep, new storms there around Nacogdoches, around Caldwell. And then the outflow continues to surge north, getting up to about 5 p.m. here. And it was one of these anvils here that we were picking up on the opening clip, but you can see that a lot of the cumulus is starting to die off, so we're losing heating, and that's given us some problems there. So a couple of last hurrahs there in East Texas, and that little outflow moving up towards Dallas. But you got to keep in mind that's a boundary that's going to kind of linger up there in North Texas and maybe get carried a little bit north. So if we were expecting storms in the Red River region tomorrow, that's something we would try to keep close tabs on using radar, surface, and anything else we can find. Mechanisms are also a little bit different there in the northeast New Mexico region, and you can see that the flow is very strong out of the southwest. We've got some jet stream energy out there, and we've got moisture working into the higher terrain there, and also the orographics around Raton and Las Vegas, New Mexico. So we roll that forward, and we can kind of see all that come together. Orographics here, and maybe a little bit of, I don't know what kind of boundary that would be, maybe possibly along the dry line. I don't have enough information at the moment here, but storms do go up, and those long anvils indicating some decent upper level winds there. And the last frames before we went on the air look like that. Pretty good storms up there south of Perryton, around I guess that'd be north of Amarillo, west of Canadian, and those will probably die off over the next few hours. And this is kind of a broad picture what's happening. See if we can run that animation and watch all the thunderstorm activity, and this goes back to about 5:30 p.m. Pretty good cloud shadows there around Woodward, down towards Canadian there. However, none of this is particularly severe, just a little bit of spotty hail and wind, and that's about it tonight. Okay, let's go ahead and check in on chat, see how things are looking. And let me bring that up here. All right, let's see here. We got Clyde Hoadley. Got the books. All right, good news there. Electric Dog checking in, and Erica Baker, Coffeyville, Kansas, 75. Shirley Keast up there in Michigan likes the drone. Great to hear that. 72 in Michigan. David Lumbert. Maumelle, Arkansas, 71 degrees there. Dew point of 70, that's pretty rich there. Thunder showers causing street flooding. Funwood Tech is here, and Burl H, 83 degrees. 63 dew point in Iowa City, Iowa. Ron Chalfon in Southern California. Burl H likes the drone view. Yeah, speaking about that drone, we did get that up to just over 1,000 feet. So I'm not going to do that again. That's pretty high for that drone, but we were just kind of playing around with the capabilities there, seeing what we can do with it. So yeah, it's nice to have that back, and we'll get some use out of it here. Ron Chalfont says not good news for Ghost 17 on the west coast. I'll have to check up to see what happened. Ryan Toomey's watching storms blowing up in Nebraska. Dean Benedict, 60 degrees and beautiful in northwest Pennsylvania. Jeff Krob there. Checking in from NOAA there. So welcome to the program. Ryan Toomey's preparing for the big rain event there in Florida. Estimates up to 10 inches there with that system coming out of the Gulf. NHC has 70% probability. Let me bring that up. I've got a couple of charts showing that there. There's the NHC graphic. Let's look at the 5-day forecast. And they've gone probably just a smidge east there, but yeah, they've brought that up to 70%. And we'll just take a quick look at the bulletin. And there's the text there. So They're just watching that drift northward. Conditions becoming more conducive. Tropical depression possible. All right, yeah, it's pretty much about what we would expected, what we have been expecting. And let me show you the tracks. I've got that up here. Invest 90L there. And this is showing some of the numerical model output, bringing NAM probably going very far west there into the Central Gulf. The others, GFS and Canadian, going more towards the western coast of Florida there. So maybe a little bit of a reprieve there for Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Probably a little bit better than it would be otherwise. Yep, Minnesota Medic Joe commenting on that poutine. Excellent there. One of these days I'll get to taste that. Ryan Toomey's commenting about the chart dates. Jeff Krob, just reading through the chat here. Jeff Krob says satellite shows the convection is more towards the weak center there. Talking about that storm there. Patrick Motes, welcome to the webcast. No rain in southeast Tennessee this week. David Lumbert asking about the Arkansas storms. Are they fed by outflow boundaries since there's no steering mechanism? Yeah, the flow is definitely kind of weak in that area. I would expect a lot of that just, opportunistic development along boundaries. And the boundaries that we have are probably, some of that cool, dry air sinking southwest from Tennessee and Kentucky. And I'm looking for my high-resolution rapid refresh. Maybe I can get a look at that environment. So let me go back here. And in fact, it's good to, if you're going to look at the air mass, you want to kind of dial this back before all the convection gets going. So I'm going to bring that back to the 16Z run and try to get a sample of the atmosphere there. Okay, I guess we can't get soundings that far back, so let me just kind of poke around till I can get them to come up. There we go. So I'm going to set a sounding there in that dry region. And we'll see what comes up here. Yeah, wow, look at that very weak flow. That photograph is pretty much dead there. And yeah, just 5 to 10 knots. The atmosphere is conditionally unstable. There's a little bit of warm air up there. So instability is not too great. The algorithm going for above 2,000. That sounds kind of high there. Let me just try to work this up. I'm guessing the temperature's probably peaked at about 90. Yeah, if that. It's now rain cooled. So that 90 there, it's probably a bit on the high side. So I'm going to try to parallel that white line, and yeah, that gives us a little bit of CAPE, but I think those numbers are a little bit overestimated. I'd say probably more on the order of 1,000 to 1,500 for those storms. So the other thing is you can see how it's uncapped. So there's nothing to keep those storms from going up. If they find any kind of boundary or even a little bit of orographics from the hills west of Little Rock there, that's enough to get them going in this kind of environment here. So yeah, that's the story there. I do have one little thing before I forget. I've got the map here. I was going to try a little bit of hand analysis, and looks like the camera got moved a little bit. Well, there's not a whole lot going on, so we'll see what we can do here. Let me move the microphone a bit. And let's see. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do much hand analysis tonight. The microphone doesn't quite reach far enough, but maybe I can point to a few things here. Yeah, south flow and deep south flow here in Texas. I'm just going to kind of sketch this on. But up there in Arkansas, you can see that. Let me see if I can adjust this a bit. Yeah, up here, down on the Boot Heel of Missouri there, a little bit of north flow coming from that region right there. So to really analyze this, it would help to go back even further, but I would think that some of that north flow, that's probably from that backdoor cold front from the Ohio River Valley. So possibly something that looks a little bit like that. So tomorrow, if you have a chance, if you want to learn a little bit about weather, analyze that early in the day between 12 and 16Z and see if you can find where the boundary is. It may be a little bit messed up by the previous night's outflow, but anyway, that's kind of the situation going on there. Down there in Louisiana, that flow is very weak. Calm winds. And what else do we got going on? Do we have a dry line out in this region? Let's see. 63, we go down to 57 at Abilene, 57 to 55 at Lubbock, 59 there around Clovis, and then down to 45. It looks like that dry line is all the way back to the mountains, kind of like that there. So that makes it kind of a late summer type pattern that we've got here. So kind of a monsoonal pattern there in New Mexico. A lot of the deeper moisture heading back towards that area, and we're left with this, we're just basically left with the table scraps from the recirculated Gulf air and some of the air mass over the southern plains there. So that's what's going on. And we'll get back to the charts here. So I'll try to work this chart analysis out where the microphone is closer, and we'll get that going here in the next few days. All right, so moving forward, let's get back to our graphics and see what's going on. I don't think we did the, I don't think we finished out the satellite. Let me take a quick look at that. There's the infrared imagery for this evening. Lots of thunderstorm activity, and we can use this to kind of get an idea where the stronger convection might be. And it appears that it is in southeastern New Mexico there. Some very cold anvils coming out of that region. And we did have that one tornado report earlier around the, I guess, Alamogordo area. And then down to the south, there's that system coming together pretty close to Belize. And I'm not sure exactly where that's going to come together. I guess it would be somewhere in this area, out over the waters, definitely. And then as that comes together, that'll be drifting north somewhere in that cone right there. So it does look wet for the eastern Gulf region. And then a look out west. Let's see, what do we got going on there? Looks like a lot of high pressure. Do we have an animation? Let me see if I can get that to animate. I'm sure Ron Chalfant there probably appreciates the look out west, even though we don't have a whole lot going on. So, yeah, there's one little weather system there, and you can see the open cell appearance of the low cloud. We're talking about this turquoise stuff. That's indicating probably some polar air moving through that area, probably a front running something like that. Warm front probably up to the north. Let me draw these in the correct colors. Let's try that there. Okay, so cold front, warm front, and most likely this is moving up towards British Columbia, up to the north, probably because of that southwest to northeast upper level steering flow that we've got out west. And out over the California coast there, just mostly the marine layer, lots of stratocumulus out in that region. And that's about it. Let's take a look at some of the SKUTs. We've got a pretty thorough workup of the surface picture. So obviously very moist across North Texas. Looks like a little bit of a moisture deficit actually right around the DFW area. See that area of 61 to 64 degree temperatures, dew point temperatures. More moist up to the north and also down to the south. So tonight's sounding is probably going to show a little bit of dry air in the low levels. So let's check that out. Dallas-Fort Worth coming up. They launched these soundings out of North Fort Worth. We don't have this evening sounding, so we'll go back to this morning sounding. But yeah, this launches in North Fort Worth, pretty close to 820 at I-35 on the north side, just southeast of there. So if you go out there maybe an hour before 12Z and 0Z, you probably see the balloon launch there. So there's the picture this morning, and it does look like some dry air aloft just above the surface. If we mix out that lowest part of the moisture, we're looking at dew points in the low 60s. So let's mix in some of that dry air and select the moisture line, and that's going to be it right there. And then we'll go with our temperature. That's going to be about 90. So the temperature line is going to go like that. And then we go up our mixing ratio. And plenty of instability there. That whole area in here, that's positive CAPE. And look how uncapped it is. There's almost no cap except for that little intersection right there. So as soon as the storms go up, or as soon as the cumulus goes up, we get the towering cumulus trying to form. Now, there wasn't much going on this morning or this evening in Fort Worth. Obviously, I'm trying to show that to you. Let's go back to this, and you can see that we're pretty devoid there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of storms. So really, it's the better moisture around Dallas that is crucial. So that little dry air, that really kind of brought down the chances of rain there at Dallas. But out to the east, we can just do a simple modification of the sounding, bring the moisture up into the mid-60s. So that'll select that line right there. Add in 90-degree temperatures, and we get totally uncapped air mass. And basically, since our LCL and temperature intersection is to the right of the line here, this is indicating that we're going to get towers going up even before we hit 90 degrees. So that moisture that we have out to the east is really all it takes to get storms going. Let's take a look around the country. Let's check out Oakland out there in California. They're going to be under the influence of that high pressure most likely. Let me get this sorted out here real quick. Okay, there's Oakland right there. And a very cool layer there near the surface, topping out at about 5,000 feet, and above that some very warm air. And that's due to that big ridge that we've got sitting over the western U.S. there. Taking a look out east, we'll go out to Atlanta. That's a very tropical looking sounding there. Almost moist adiabatic, and definitely an abundance of moisture. So if we warm this up to maybe 80 degrees, there's our 80-degree line, and then we'll mix in some moisture, maybe about 65 dew point after everything's mixed. And we've got a very favorable profile there for showers. Let's see what happened out there. Let me switch over to the satellite. And yeah, there's quite a bit of shower activity in that region. Let's do a couple of wild cards and go way up to the north maybe. Let's try looking at Alaska. We'll go out to Fairbanks. They're up in that area right there in the central part of the state. And I have no idea what the weather patterns have been doing up there. However, looks like a somewhat mild sounding right there. I'm surprised at the lapse rate here. There's a lot of cool air aloft and some warm air down at the surface. So it appears we've had some polar air kind of generating and modifying as it spreads across the interior there. The strong heating taking effect there. They're shifting into summer. The tropopause, though, is a little bit low there, about 30,000 feet. And the flow very weak. So if we have a little bit more moisture, we could easily get some showers going in that kind of profile. And let's check out Greenland. Let's go way up in the Arctic. Let's try way up here, alert, very close to the North Pole. Let's see what they're doing today. Alert, that's on Elamir Island. And the temperatures are running about 14 Fahrenheit at the surface. Lots of cold air in the lowest 5,000 feet. And then the air is a little bit more mild above that layer. So that looks like maybe the top of a polar air mass. This is all probably polar air, and here we have some more mild air above that layer. And you can see the shift in the wind direction there. So it appears this very cold air has come right off the ice pack, and then this other air has come from a more, I guess, more marine type environment out to the maybe out around Greenland or circulated up from the Labrador Sea. Let's try one more. This is always interesting. You never know what's going to come up. Let's try Moscow. That's going to be over here. That should get us in the ballpark of Moscow, maybe. Okay. Nizhny Novgorod, well, that's close enough there. So we're kind of using this to kind of, understand soundings. The more we look at this, the more it's going to help you learn when you get into some of these complex weather situations. So let's look at this Russian sounding. Looks like some warm air aloft right there. Also dry, so maybe a little bit of ridging up at that level. See how we got warm and high or a low relative humidity. The distance between those two lines indicates the wider it is, the more dry air you have in terms of relative humidity. And then down on the lower levels, it becomes more humid. And this is very, this looks a lot like polar air that has been modifying. See that very steep lapse rate right there? So it's been warming from a very, lots of sunshine hitting the ground right there and mixing with the very cold part of the polar air mass right there, and gradually modifying there, and above that there's that very warm air mass there. Not much of a difference there in the wind, but 70 knot winds, probably a little bit of jet stream energy through that region there. So this would probably look like Illinois on the backside of a cold front close to the high pressure. It would have a sounding that looks a lot like this here. All right, let's get back into the forecast. Of course, we'll do our forecast wildcard there, our forecast graphic, and we'll see what's going to happen. Go straight to the high-resolution rapid refresh. This will give us the short-term picture. And let's see how it verified. This is a 21Z run, so we'll run this up to 01Z, kind of compare notes, and that looks pretty close to the current picture there. Also the storms there over Little Rock also showing up. So let's see the trend. Looks like everything dies out. The stuff in northwest Oklahoma kind of hangs on a few extra hours, but that's gone at 3 in the morning. So these things are definitely diurnally driven. The solar heating, that's really the key. The low-level moisture, especially in Arkansas, Louisiana, that's probably second there. Third is the boundaries, and that's especially true there in New Mexico. So those are the ingredients that are helping with the convection. Take a look in the Central Plains, what we got going on there. Current picture right around here. Okay, so what does this show us? Looks like a lee side low, probably a bit of a thermal trough there around Colorado Springs and Pueblo. Got the southerly flow coming up from Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. Got our MCS up there in Nebraska, probably formed along those mountain ranges there. And let's see what happens overnight. Yep, stuff down south dies off due to the influence of that ridge there, and the stuff closer to the jet hangs on, and it's still going there in eastern Nebraska by 8 to 9 in the morning. But as so often happens with MCSs, by 10 to 11 in the morning, it's gone. So that brings us to tomorrow. All right, so tomorrow morning, this is what the map looks like. So how do we read this? Let me get the mic out of the way. It's get a better look at this. All right, so what I'm going to do is look for the high pressure areas. That'll really help you a lot. Start with the highs, especially this time of year. And I'm not looking for like a little high in here or anything like that. I'm looking for a very broad synoptic scale highs. So that right there, that's a big cool air mass, and you see the extent of that. So that's got a very wide influence all the way from New England down to Arkansas and Oklahoma. And you can see that little bit of ridging there in Arkansas. See, there's a 1020 millibar line right there. There's a 1018 millibar line right there. So that indicates a north to south gradient. So that's going to bring some cool, mild, and dry air southward, but not enough to wipe out the thunderstorm potential, but enough to provide some boundaries and maybe a little lift to keep those going. So depending on how much dry air comes south, that's going to kind of influence how much thunderstorm activity we have in Arkansas tomorrow. Probably what will happen is we'll either have redevelopment or it will shift south into Louisiana there. All right, what else is going on? Well, first there's our polar high, and then we have our very weak Pacific high right there off the Southern California coast. Any other highs? Yeah, there's kind of a plateau high right here. And let's see, what else do we have going on? That's probably about it. So the gradient, what this indicates, let me just kind of draw the flow that this is suggesting. It's going to be something like that. In between, this is going to be kind of a deformation zone right there. So there it's not going to be either. The flow will probably just kind of go around that deformation zone. And then we've got that wind moving like that right there. We've probably got a thermal low in the desert southwest somewhere, and then up in the northwest U.S., the gradient kind of runs like that. So this is basically shunting moisture westward into West Texas and southern New Mexico there. And this is showing also some cool air coming down into the Dakotas there. So it looks like a bit of a cold front entering that area. And as for Texas, looks like some of that ridging there and not much upper level support. So running that forward, there's what things look like tomorrow evening, and it looks like those storms do shift down into Louisiana. So it'll be a little bit drier there in Arkansas and Tennessee. Up to the north, a bit of an MCS. Storms moving from the Dakotas into the the western Great Lakes there. And we can see the height falls out to the west as looks like a new upper level low approaching the coast there. So possibly a weak little front coming onshore into California. Yeah, we're going to see that upper level flow start picking up along the west coast. And then down to the south, we've got the tropical system starting to head north. Now remember, this NAM is going further west than the other models did. NAM heading more into the Central Gulf, and the GFS, that is heading more towards western Florida out in this region here. So the last frame of the NAM, Saturday night at 6Z, just after midnight. I don't know how many of you watch Saturday Night Live, but this will be just after that airs. NAM's got that over the Central Gulf right there, and the GFS, I think that's got that more towards Florida. All right, so that's kind of what's happening in the short term, and let's switch over to the GFS. Yeah, I don't know, let's take a look at the upper air. Let's do this real quick. Start out with right now. Here's the chart we have right now. There goes our upper level low into Montana. Some broad jet broad, modest upper-level jet stream energy coming up from Southern California into the Dakotas. So that's where most of the organized storms are going to be, is up north. And then in Texas, we got this ridge here. So, yeah, Arkansas also under that ridge, but they've got the really juicy moisture and the boundaries. That really makes the difference. So that low moves up to the north, and it appears we've got this very strong trough coming on shore. It's kind of a bit of a surprise there. That's really, that's generally these blocking patterns break down if you have a strong trough approaching, and looks like this one's it. So this is breaking down the pattern pretty effectively. Unfortunately, it looks like it's heading kind of to the northeast there. Anyway, the jet stream winds coming on shore, and then when we get towards the end of the run for Saturday, most of the jet stream energy is heading up into the northern plains like that there. So initially, the best storms are going to start out this weekend up north like that, and then maybe we'll start getting some dribs and drabs in Texas and New Mexico and Kansas there as far as organized storms. All right, then we'll take a look at the GFS for the longer-term picture. Bring this up to this weekend. There's that thermal trough there in Colorado. That's a low-pressure center right there. So we got the southerly flow in place still. A little bit of a wind shift right there. That could be maybe some old boundaries being picked up. Let me back this up a little bit, see where that comes from. Yeah, I think what that is, that's the outflow from all this convection in Kansas there, laying down some cold pools, and it's causing that little bit of ridging that we see there on that surface chart. Anyway, towards Saturday, let's see what happens. Here comes that system there on the GFS coming up towards Tampa, and there's 6Z for Saturday night. Remember, the NEM had it right there. GFS has got that over the Tallahassee area. And we can see that there on Sunday, things are starting to get kind of organized up there in Wyoming and Montana. Starting to develop that lee side trough. You can see how we've got kind of a linear look to that trough there. If you go back several days, that little low, see how it's more circular. That's probably more of a thermal low there. And then once we pull in that strong upper level flow into Colorado, now it becomes more elliptical there. So this is probably a good example of things starting to come together, and maybe we'll start turning things around as far as severe weather prospects. So going into Monday, looks like a couple of good storm outbreaks, probably along Interstate 70 or northward into the Dakotas somewhere. And then looks like the flow continues to increase over the high plains going into Tuesday. This is 6Z, so that looks like a little MCS there coming into Kansas. The following day, more convection along this inverted trough right there. So Tuesday going into Wednesday, that could be good for the central plains and the southern plains. Let's see what things look like on the SKU-T for Tuesday night. This is for Kansas, and we're just taking a quick look at the environment. Wow, look at that steep lapse right there. It's almost dry adiabatic. It's not going to take much to get thunderstorms going in that. So 65-degree dew point with that, 91, and that's going to be easily 3,000 to 4,000 CAPE. And look at that photograph there. That's looking pretty good there. In fact, that 1 kilometer plot there, look at that. That's southeast winds at 40 knots, which is pretty strong for 0Z. Usually the low-level jet is a morning time feature. And the sounding analog there, got a couple of matches. 1999, June 29th. I think I actually chased that day. That's think I was with Gene Roden. We went out to Plainview. I'm pretty sure that was the 29th. I think there was a couple tornadoes up around Stratford, maybe. I don't know. My memory's kind of hazy, but yeah, that's interesting. All right, so looks like things will be picking up next week. And let's continue moving forward. Still got that troughiness out west, which is good. We can do a lot more with troughing than we can with a lot of ridging out in that area. That would be really bad if we had ridging. That would shut us down almost certainly. All right, towards the 200-hour point, going into the June 2nd and 3rd, very massive high-pressure area building out of Hudson Bay. So it really gets cranking one last party time there for that Hudson Bay vortex, and it drives that front all the way down to Oklahoma. Looks like the better winds are still up in the Central Plains, so that front is not doing very much for the Red River. And here comes that cold air mass coming southward, and that'll probably deplete the moisture out of Texas. So let me just bring this up for the 4th for Dallas-Fort Worth. And you can see here on the profile here, north winds all the way from the surface up to the top of the QT. So that's not going to be too conducive for severe weather, and dew points are running mostly in the 50s off the surface. But that's 270 hours out, and a lot could change between now and then. And the GFS spins up another little circulation out over the central Gulf. Seems like this far out, the GFS does tend to overestimate the intensity of those systems. So we're going to have to wait until about maybe May 28th to May 30th before we have a good handle on whatever that is. So anyway, yeah, it does look interesting, at least for the Central Plains. Looks like a lot of action there. But at this point, not a whole lot going on there. All right, let me do one last look at chat here. Having trouble reading this. Let me bring this window over here. All right, catching up on chat. Yeah, Go 17, ABI, Imager having unforeseen difficulties. That's bad news there. Right there, Tim said the M word will be his first monsoon season in Tucson. Excellent. Go 17, circulation problems with that system, cannot accurately control the IR detector, so can't obtain an accurate IR calibration. Yeah, that's really too bad. Seems like the quality control on the Go satellites has actually been pretty good, so it's surprising to see this bit of bad news there. Christopher Fallbush, welcome to the program. Patrick Motes also attending University of Tennessee, Martin. Very good. I appreciate the comments. David Holcomb loves the forecast intro. Yeah, that thing right there. And yeah, I've got this video switcher here. I'll try to, I don't know if that'll go all the way over there, but this is kind of a nice addition, and the Patreon donations have helped with this a lot. So I'm able to pull some of these gadgets in here to really make the stream a little bit more fun. So I appreciate the Patreon help, and I need to get a title card up so you all know how to get there. All right, so sounding for Eastern Hawaii. Let me see if I can do that. Just let me check real quick. Probably not going to be able to spend too much time on that because I'm running out of, getting kind of close to 9 o'clock. Scooties, where'd they go? Okay. Yeah, you can go to this University of Wyoming site. It's got all these different regions, and we can just go to, where are they going to be? North America? Yeah, for some reason the map's not coming up there. I'm not getting the clickable sounding, so I'm not too sure what the problem is there. Let me just try a couple more, and then we'll just move on. So yeah, I may not be able to do that, but I'll try to keep that in mind for the next couple days here. All right there, drone giveaways. Yeah, good question. Good catch there. Drone giveaways. I saw one for, I think, yeah, the place that does our sound here, Epidemic Sound. Yeah, they're doing a drone giveaway. That seems to be the thing. Ryan Toomey says the system will move much slower than the GFS. Nothing pulling or influencing the storm system. So we're talking about that spin up there out in the Gulf for early June. And very good. Appreciate the cyclone phase evolution, Jeff. And David Lumbert, appreciate the comments quite a bit. Anyway, thanks for joining the webcast, and we'll see you all tomorrow. And let me just make sure. Yeah, tomorrow's Thursday. We'll be on at the usual time. So do that music and get that going. I appreciate you all watching the webcast, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, have a good one. Take care.